Good evening, I am Marc Bourlière. I am a pathologist in Saint Joseph Hospital in Marseille, and I'm going to give you the take-home message of the first day of PHC. So we had a very busy day, and we begin the session this morning by two sessions on Hep B. The first session was on Hep B, the actual treatment, and it begins by Sang-Jin Lee, who give us an insight on the guidelines, both the APASL, EASL, AASLD, and WHO guidelines on Hep B. What he showed us is that making a guideline being more and more difficult, and we need to have some very complex process. And by the end, we don't know that with all this complexity, we'll add anything into the value of the guideline. Overall, there is only slight difference between guidelines, between the AASLD, EASL, and APASL guidelines. That may not link to a huge difference in terms of treatment uptake around the world. However, there is now calculators that can be used at an individual level to predict who needs to be treated, and we need to use this kind of calculators, online calculators. Moreover, what he explained to us is that these guidelines may change in the future if we improve the objective of HBV therapy. Then we had a very nice presentation by Thomas Berg from Leipzig, who showed us how the new biomarkers from Hep B, like HBC core-related antigens, HBV RNA, or median or low, large or median HBs antigens particles, or HBs antigens titer, or anti-HBC titer, may help us in the future to determine in patients with partial response who will stay in a very silence mode in evolutions and who needs to be retreated. So that was very interesting because it really gave an insight on how we can use these new tools that are now or will become soon available. Then we move with a nice talk from Maria Butti about how we need to use NUC currently. We need, of course, to assess the patients in whole, and in order to select which NUC we can give it to him, we need to be focused on special populations. Of course, we need also to switch patients who are treated with TDF to TAF in case of bad factors such as osteopenia, osteoporosis, and renal injury. But in final, the majority of patients will remain on TDF. And finally, more importantly, we have not to forget that we need to screen for HCC when patients are on the NUC, and we need to remain this screening all the time. The next point and the last point is, do we are now going to a finite duration therapy with NUC? And the answer is not yet. What we need to do is to use maybe the tools that have been shown by Thomas Berg in the previous talk in order to help us to select the patients who maybe will be good candidates for stopping NUC and always in non-cirrhotic patients. Then we had a state of the art. We have clinical cases that have been reported by Mitch Schiffman about Hep B patients, and in fact he go with two clinical cases, one of an HB patient not treated, and in which the liver disease was more aggressive due to spontaneous HBe clearance, or other drugs such as immunosuppressive therapy or any other drug that can lower the immune status and therefore increase the replication. And in this case, if the patients are not treated, we need to treat these patients right away. We need to remove all the other drugs that can provoke any immunodepressions, and in order to avoid the aggravations of the disease and to impeach liver transplantations. The other cases was the cases of patients who have been already treated and who had an aggravations of the liver disease linked to other things, such as, for example, acute alcoholic hepatitis, or also NASH that can involve also in Hep B patients. And in this case, we need to stay on treatments and remove the illicit agents if we have. For example, those patients who have these aggravations under immunosuppressive therapy, we need to remove immunosuppressive therapy, and in the same way in order to avoid the aggravations of the disease and the risk of liver transplantations. Then we move to the second part of the Hep B session, the second session on Hep B, and this session was devoted to the new drugs. And Fabien Zoulim gave us a very nice insight on all the drugs that are currently available. And what it shows us is that most of those drugs need to be combined, and we are not sure that with those drugs we need not also to use immune modulators in order to achieve the HBV cure. And then about immunomodulations, Massimo Levrero gave us a very nice presentation on how both innate and adaptive immunity are decreased in Hep B. They show us the current studies with the new molecules in order to improve immunity. They show the results that are really consistent. However, currently, interferon is the only drug that are currently available that allow us to improve immunity. And what he demonstrates in the last part of his talk is that why this immune therapy still don't work so far. It's maybe because we need to select the population in which we are using this immune therapy, and these populations may change according not only to viral replications, but also to the patient's type and the patient's immunity. And therefore we have to study that in order to give the right treatment at the right moment. And by the end, at the discussions, they had a very nice conclusions that we can think that maybe it's more sequential therapy with various type of treatments that can help us to achieve HBV cure. Then we move to the Hep E state-of-art lecture, and this was given by Jean-Marie Perron. And Jean-Marie Perron showed us the increased incidence of hepatitis E in most of the country. He stressed the fact that some subtype like 3F might be deleterious in terms of clinical outcome. He showed us that the neurological disorders that are frequently associated with Hep E might need treatment with ribavirin right away in order to improve the patients for their neurologic symptoms. And also he discussed about the treatment with ribavirin in some immunocompetent patients, as he had already demonstrated in a published paper that in patients with, for example, cirrhosis, it might be useful to treat them with ribavirin even if they are not immunodepressed, but they are still immunocompetent. Lastly, he talked about the new treatment that we can discuss in case of failure of ribavirin in the treatment. And in this setting, there is really no news, except the fact that in this setting you can use PEG interferon, which is working, but this is not a new drug, this is a whole drugs. That's for the morning, and then we move to the afternoon, and during the afternoon we have a very nice Delta session in which George Papatheodoridis gave us some insight about the epidemiology of hepatitis delta. Of course, the epidemiology of hepatitis delta, the incidence is always increasing, mostly in developing countries, but also in some Western countries, mostly due to the immigrant populations. And of course, in the developed country, we have to think that in some special populations, like persons who use drug or patients who have a special sexual behavior, we could have an increased risk of HDV contaminations for those who are not vaccinated against Hep B. And therefore, he stressed the fact that it's important to fight for HBV vaccinations and to continue to have research on HDV drugs. Pietro Lampertico then after went and explained how interferon is currently working. Interferon is the only labeled drug for Delta currently available, and this drug achieves HDV RNA suppressions only in 20% of the populations and with a high rate of relapse. So therefore there is need for improvement, and if we extend the durations of treatments, if we had NUC on the top of PEG, it didn't increase much more the rate of response. So therefore, there is a really urgent need for new drug development in Delta. And therefore, Tariq Asselah developed the recent development of at least 3 drugs, which is bulevirtide, the Mircludex, the N3 inhibitors, the frenulations inhibitor lonafarnib, and also the NAP, the REP. And the result of those studies are very impressive, especially for the REP. And so what we need to have now is a very hard endpoint such as decrease of cirrhosis and decrease of hepatocellular carcinoma that will give us more insight on the value of those drugs. But clearly we have currently some drug. These drugs maybe need to be combined in the future. And currently most of these drugs are combined with PEG interferon. And again, there is some effort to be done in terms of Delta research for improving the Delta treatment. Then we move to the state-of-the-art lecture of Michael Manns, who give us very nice insight about how we need to use the right drug in the right patients. We need to use obeticholic acid and bezafibrate in patients who are in failure of UDCA for PBC. Of course, there is other drugs that are now in development in PBC and that can give us much improvement. However, we have already 3 drugs. These 3 drugs could be combined 2 by 2, and then the 3 drugs can be used in patients who are not responding to the combinations. But anyway, we need to have more drugs in this setting. For PSC, there is no real available drugs. We are all using UDCA, but this is not a magic drug in this setting. And clearly, there is also new development in new drugs that are currently done. And we need to follow this in order to have really a treatment for PSC, which is really a non-met need now. Looking to autoimmune hepatitis, I think that it really stressed the fact that when a patient is in failure, there is also new compounds that are now coming at the stage of early clinical research, and that may provide interesting results in terms of patients who had autoimmune hepatitis non-responding to corticosteroid and Immurel. Then we move to the Hep C session. The Hep C session was devoted on what was the remaining problem with Hep C and on macro and micro eliminations. Stefan Zezem shows us the challenging populations, which are quite limited and restricted to a few number of patients. And most of them, such as the decompensated cirrhotic patients, they are not going to be any more problem because they have been already treated or they have been already transplanted. And so these problems are going to be very limited, and therefore currently we have the tools in order to achieve HCV eliminations. The main problem is to increase awareness, screening, diagnostic rate, linkage to care, and access to treatment. Then, knowing that, Ola Welland from Sweden talked us about macro eliminations, how macro eliminations can work, and currently to follow the WHO goal of 2030, there is only 12 countries who are on the track of eliminations. The rest of the world are not on track, and 84% of the high-income countries are not going to achieve the WHO goal of 2030, of 2030. And therefore, the improvement of macroelimination is based on a conjugation of both a collaborative effort from healthcare workers, of the government, of the patients, and all the society. So we need to put together, and we need also to have funding to do that, and to increase awareness, diagnostic rate, linkage to care, and then access to treatment. Microeliminations, Stanislas Paul showed us that there was at least three different populations, the easy to access patients, and even in these easy to access populations, the one we are currently following, not all patients are already cured, even in France. So that means that even when it's easy, it's not always feasible. So of course, the problem becomes more complicated if you are going to reach the populations who are hard to detect or hard to reach. And in this case, we need to involve other healthcare providers in order to improve awareness, screening, and engage to care and treatment. So of course, what we need to do is we need to be pragmatic, and we need to multiply all the micro-eliminations projects in order to achieve the eliminations at the years 2025. Lastly, we had a state-of-the-art lecture about vascular disease, and Dominique Valla showed us that in case of congenital intra-portosystemic shunt, we really can do an occlusion of this shunt as a preventive measure, and it's really improved the patients, linked to a paper recently published of retrospective cases which are taken all over the world. Looking about flow velocity and the relation with flow velocity and portal vein thrombosis, he said that currently we have no threshold that will allow us to do something and to use anticoagulant in patients with low velocity in order to avoid portal vein thrombosis. We need to have more study because all those factors can be completely overlap between one to the other. So it's clear that reduced velocity is linked to portal vein thrombosis, but it's not the only factor. So we need currently more studies in order to have a threshold in which we could use anticoagulant in this setting. The worst effect of non-selective beta blockers on portal vein thrombosis remain an issue, and again there is no evident data that suggests that we need to remove beta blockers in advanced cirrhotic patients in order to avoid portal vein thrombosis. And I think we have go over the whole journey of the PHE 2020. That was the first journey, a very interesting journey, and we hope that tomorrow will be the same. Thank you very much.